Hey everyone, it's Dr. Erin here, one of the good doctors of Abbey Research, and I'm here with today's Abbey Research Reads to review the book, the ones we've been waiting for, How a New Generation of Leaders Will Transform America by, covered her name there, Charlotte Alter. If you've been following our social media coverage and our LinkedIn articles and our blog posts, you'll know that for the last 5 weeks, we've been talking about a lot of generational issues and how different generational perspectives and worldviews and ideas about the workplace can impact your office dynamics and your office culture. Dr. Donnelly already did a book review of Malcolm Harris's Kids These Days, looking specifically at the millennial generation. And this book just came out in February 18th, so just a couple weeks ago, hot off the presses. And I'm here to tell you that it should be added to your list. If we have the Abbey Research shelf of workplace Bibles, we've already added Caroline Criado Perez's Invisible Women, which you'll see behind me on this shelf, to talk about issues related to gender in the workplace. This should be your new Bible for generations in the workplace. Specifically, what this book does is it follows and profiles 7 or 8 emerging millennial leaders within the field of politics. So it profiles both Democratic and Republican millennials who have run for mayors, city councilors, Congress persons, and senators as well. So in here, we've got some pretty well-known names of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Pete Buttigieg, Dan Crenshaw, and a whole host of others that if you're paying attention to politics in the United States, you might recognize their names. Certainly a lot of them were part of the wave of millennials that were elected in the 2018 midterm election here in the US. But what she does, aside from profiling these humans, is really, in a very detailed and very easy to understand way, lay out how the millennial generation got made. And you might say that sounds a little bit esoteric, but it's kind of the making of a generation is really important to understand, because then if you understand that, you will know how they see the world, how they see issues like gender, climate change, politics, workplace dynamics, flexible pay, and working situations, family leave, healthcare, all of these issues that directly impact your office dynamics, your ability to lead and manage people, have in a lot of ways a generational perspective. So she starts by explaining how millennials came to see the world, how they were influenced by their parents, which were by and large baby boomers, and baby boomers' perspective on the world, the high value placed on higher education and university degrees, which has led for most millennials to a dramatic increase in personal debt and student loan debt, which is something she certainly goes into very early on. One of the best explanations I've seen of how we were all, because I have a millennial, how we were all pushed by society and by our parents to get a higher education without really understanding that the cost of education had gone up so much in about a 30-year period. So she traces it back to, first of all, this idea that she and others have called the education gospel, that we are a better society and we can all be more productive citizens if we have college and university level degrees and beyond, which was not always the case in America. That belief has not always been predominant. And she takes that idea and says, right, so we were all told we had to go to college to be successful. What we weren't told was that the cost of education, of higher education, in some instances, I don't even know how to say, multiplied by 7. I don't know how to say the quadrupled version of that. Multiplied by 7, which thus you have millennials graduating in the mid 2000s, right around the economic recession. Jobs are harder to find, salaries are down, and we all have exorbitant debt. So that's one example of how she kind of traces the impact of events and decisions on the millennial generation. A lot of consideration is given to historic events that change our perspective on the world. She starts with 9/11. She traces a lot of mass shootings and how that has impacted specifically my generation's view on laws relating to gun control and gun legislation. She talks about the 2008 recession and how that has changed our perspective on the economy. So there's a lot of important issues that are worth considering, particularly in a comparative view. It certainly helped me a lot as a millennial understand a lot of things that I knew were happening as I was growing up into my late teens, early and mid 20s. And I can reflect back now as a person in my mid 30s on how those events shaped my worldview. But it's also done a great job of showing how the different generations in the workplace, specifically what we're dealing with mostly now, are huge differences between the baby boomer workers, the Gen X workers, and the millennial workers. So it's got a lot of practical applications, I think, for how you can approach working and leading and managing these people with very, very different perspectives on not only how the world should work and how the government should work, but that trickles down into, you know, how the office should work, to issues about gender equity and gender representation, family health care and family leave policies, saving for retirement, matching 401ks. Statistically, she notes that most millennials don't believe that we're going to retire, or that we will be able to save enough money to retire, mostly because of the high levels of education debt that we have undertaken. We are not getting married as much. We are not buying homes and having mortgages. We are not buying cars. All of these ways that are considered participating in the economy and participating in being members of the society, a lot of millennials are so crippled by their debt that they're unable to do that. So that's a really important thing to understand when you're working with millennials in your office and in other companies that you might be collaborating with. So I cannot recommend this enough. It does have a slightly liberal lean towards it, which by and large is statistically where the majority of millennials are going. But she talks a lot about whatever your political persuasion and the different ways that young millennial Democrats and Republicans have taken these viewpoints and gone forward into roles within the political sphere. So I can't recommend it highly enough. Pick up your copy today. The link will be in the show notes below to where you can find the book and more about it. And as a note, in just a few weeks' time, Dr. Kristen and I will be talking specifically about economic issues and the impact of historic events on different generations. We're looking at comparing Watergate and the 2008 recession on two very different generational perspectives in a free webinar on the 16th of March, which is a Monday at 12 noon. I'll have the link below in the show notes if you'd like to join us for a half-hour discussion about some of these issues and how they can help you better understand all the people that you work with, no matter what generation they're from. But that's everything I have for this edition of Abbey Research Reads. We'll see you again for our next book review. Take care, everybody.